Imagine a farmhouse in the Canadian prairies. It is February, the kind of cold that makes the walls of a house contract and groan in the night like something alive and suffering. A woman is lying in a bed in the back room, so still that the two children watching from the doorway are not entirely certain she is breathing. A man they have never seen before walks through the front door, stamps the snow from his boots, and does not take off his coat. He kneels beside the bed. He does not pray loudly. He does not raise his hands. He says something so quietly that even the children cannot hear it. And then he stands and he says to the woman's husband, "She will be up by morning." She is. The doctor comes back the following day and stands in the doorway of the kitchen where she is washing dishes and does not say anything for a long moment. And the man who prayed for her, he walked 4 miles home through the snow that night and sat down in his own kitchen and opened his Bible to the same passage he had been reading for 11 years. Not because he was impressive, because he had run out of reasons to stop. This is the story of Oswald Reginald Chambers. He is born in Aberdeen, Scotland in 1874, the fourth son of a Baptist minister named Clarence Chambers and his wife. The house is not wealthy. There are more children than there is space for them, and the furniture is worn, and the wind off the North Sea finds its way through the window frames in a way that no amount of stuffing with rags seems to entirely defeat. But there is a Bible on the table. There is prayer before meals. There is a father who believes, with a straightforwardness that makes no apologies, that God is not a concept but a person, and that a person can be known. Oswald grows up with that certainty around him like weather. He does not yet know whether he shares it or has simply inherited its atmosphere. What he knows by the time he is 15 is that he can draw, not in the way children draw, but in the way that stops people. His sketchbooks are full of faces, full of the fold of cloth and the angle of light on stone. He goes to the Trustees' Academy in Edinburgh, then to the London School of Art. His teachers tell him things they do not say to most students. He is going to be someone. He can feel it, the way you feel a current underwater, pulling him towards something large and specific. And underneath all of it, pressed thin like a leaf between pages, there is something else. A question he cannot silence. The art fills every room he enters, fills every hour he gives it, and still, when he walks home in the evening, there is a sound underneath the city noise that he cannot quite hear clearly enough to name. He is 19 years old when Charles Spurgeon preaches in London. Oswald does not go expecting anything particular. He goes because his father mentions it, and the hall is crowded, and the crowd has its own momentum. But something happens in that hall. Not dramatic, not visible to anyone sitting near him. Something shifts, the way a beam shifts in an old building, quietly, with enormous consequence for everything the beam is holding up. He goes home. He kneels beside his bed. He is there for a long time. He does not tell anyone what happened that night. He gets up. He goes back to his sketchbooks. He continues studying art. From the outside, nothing has changed. But there is a new question pressing against the first one now, and these two questions have begun turning around each other in a way he does not yet have the vocabulary to describe. When do we get to do the stuff? He does not say this out loud. Not yet. But it is there. He leaves the London School of Art. He enrolls in a college to study philosophy, then theology. He reads with the same intensity he once gave to charcoal and linen paper. He reads not to confirm what he already believes, but to find out what he actually thinks, which is a rarer and more dangerous way to read. And it produces a young man who is permanently uncomfortable to argue with. He writes in his journal. He writes about the gap between the Christianity he reads in the New Testament and the Christianity he observes on Sunday mornings in perfectly respectable churches with perfectly respectable people who have, collectively, never once expected anything unusual to happen to them. He cannot accept this. And here is where the cost begins. He is 22. He has a gift that people do not throw away. He has teachers who've staked something on him. He has a future in art that is not abstract or vague but specific and plausible and waiting. And something is asking him to put it down. He does not put it down quickly. This is important. He does not have a single dramatic moment of surrender in which everything resolves cleanly. He has months of fighting it. He has seasons of trying to hold both things at once, the charcoal in one hand and the question in the other, and feeling them pull in opposite directions with increasing violence. He writes in his journal, "I can get on without painting. Can I get on without God?" And then, a few pages later, the terrible second question, "Can God get on without me?" The second question is not arrogance. It is the beginning of something much harder than arrogance. It is the beginning of obedience. He puts the art down, not dramatically. He simply stops. He turns his attention elsewhere completely, and he does not look back, or rather he does not permit himself to look back, which is a different thing entirely and requires a different kind of discipline. He has no ministry. He has no calling confirmed in writing. He has no one telling him this is a sensible thing to do. He has a question he cannot outrun and a God he has decided to take seriously enough to follow into the unknown. He takes a job. He teaches. He preaches where he is asked to preach, which at first is not often and not in large rooms. He is not immediately impressive on a platform. He is not the man who makes the crowd lean forward with polished technique and perfected timing. He is the man who walks in and stands there and says what he actually believes, and the people who hear him can tell the difference, though they could not always say exactly how. He marries Gertrude Hobbs in 1910. She is a woman of considerable capacity, a trained stenographer with a mind precise enough to hold his thinking and record it, and return it to him better organized than he left it. She will matter enormously to everything that follows, more than most of the history books say. He goes to Japan. He goes with the League of Prayer, a holiness movement, preaching across the country. He is in Tokyo. He is in Kyoto. He stands before audiences who are politely skeptical, and sometimes not even politely skeptical, and he preaches the same thing he would preach in a drawing room in Surrey, with the same directness and the same complete absence of performance. He comes home. He starts a Bible college in Clapham, the Battersea Rise House. It is small. It is never particularly well funded. It runs almost entirely on faith and on Gertrude's organizational capacity and on the fact that Oswald Chambers is, whatever else he is, someone students feel they can trust to tell them the truth. He teaches, week after week. He does not teach people to perform Christianity. He teaches them to live it, and the distinction is one he guards with a tenacity that occasionally makes him difficult to be around. And during these years he is learning something he did not expect to have to learn. He is learning what to do when God is silent. He prays. Every morning, before the students come, before Gertrude comes, before the day organizes itself around him, he prays for students he cannot reach. He prays for colleagues whose faith has gone dry and who are performing the motions of ministry, while privately wondering if the well ever comes back. He prays for things he does not see evidence of. He keeps praying. He writes in his journal, "Prayer does not fit us for the greater works. Prayer is the greater works." He does not write this to be quotable. He writes it because he is trying to understand his own life. He nearly stops, not publicly. Nobody knows this except Gertrude, and he tells her reluctantly. There is a period in the college's early years when the funding is very bad and the attendance is low, and he has been teaching the same material for long enough that he can hear himself teaching it without his full attention. The gap between what he is saying and what he is experiencing in his own prayer life feels, on certain mornings, dishonest. He does not quit. But he comes close enough to understand what quitting would feel like, and the understanding sobers him. Then a man named Percy Crawford comes to speak at the college. Crawford is everything Oswald is not on a platform, fluid and confident and immediately compelling. Oswald watches him and feels briefly the old question again. Is this what I was supposed to become? Is the gift I put in the ground the gift I should have kept? And then Crawford does something in the meeting, something Oswald has read about in the New Testament but has not seen, cleanly and without qualification, in a room he is standing in. A young woman in the third row is weeping, not from emotion but from something else, from something entering her that she has no category for. Crawford prays for her, briefly, simply, without theater. She straightens. Her face changes, the color comes back to it, and Oswald realizes, standing against the back wall, that he has been teaching the gospel as history. Crawford is preaching it as instructions. He goes home that night and does not sleep. He reads the Gospels again, all four of them, not as literature, not as theology, as a job description. He reads Matthew 10 and he reads John 14 and he reads Acts and he reads them the way a man reads the manual for a machine that he has already assembled but has never turned on. And what he finds there undoes him in a way that the Spurgeon meeting 2 decades earlier had not quite undone him, because now he has more to lose and more to own. He gets up before dawn. He kneels. He says out loud to no one in the room, "I have only been doing half the job." He walks back into the college the next morning and begins again. He does not suddenly become dramatic. He does not reorganize his entire curriculum overnight. But something changes in the room when he teaches, and the students notice, and they cannot say exactly what it is. Except that when he prays now, there is no distance between the words and whatever he actually believes is true. He starts asking people forward to be prayed for at the end of his teaching. It is small. At first, it is awkward. He is not polished at it, and he knows he is not polished at it, and he does not perform a confidence he does not have, which is perhaps the thing about him that makes people trust him with their actual problems. In 1915, something happens that no one in Oswald's life expects. The First World War has been going for a year. The Canadian YMCA is recruiting people to go to Egypt, to the training camps in the desert outside Cairo, to minister to the soldiers who are staging there before being sent into the meat of the campaign. It is not a prestigious posting. It is not a safe posting. It is a posting that will pay almost nothing and require everything, and it is absolutely not the kind of posting someone applies for who is building something in London that still needs building. Oswald and Gertrude go. They go with their daughter Kathleen, who is 3 years old and does not know she is doing anything unusual. They arrive at Zatoun, Egypt, a camp of 30,000 men in the desert outside Cairo. Oswald is given a hut, a wooden hut with canvas walls and a floor that is never entirely free of sand, and a ceiling that lets in the heat in a way that makes afternoon teaching a particular act of will. He teaches every morning. He teaches every night. He teaches men who have not been in a church since they were 12. He teaches men who are going to die in 6 weeks and who know, on some level, that they are going to die in 6 weeks, and who have run out of the usual reasons to pretend otherwise. He teaches them the way he has always taught, directly and without performance, and the directness is the thing that reaches men who have stopped being reachable by performance. He prays for the sick, not dramatically, not theatrically. He sits beside the men in the medical huts who are feverish or broken or simply afraid, and he talks to them and he prays. And sometimes what happens afterward has no good medical explanation, and the doctors say so. He does not claim more than he knows. He does not manufacture reports of miracles or inflate what God has done to make it more impressive. He simply keeps going back to the next hut and the next man. He writes letters, hundreds of them. Gertrude writes hundreds more. The letters go to families in Canada, in England, in Australia, telling them what their sons are like, what their sons talk about, what their sons are afraid of. The letters go to students at the Battersea College who are now scattered or enlisted, or simply trying to hold their faith together in a world that makes faith feel like a frivolous antique. And in the mornings, before anyone else is awake, he kneels in the sand outside the hut, and he opens his Bible, and he prays the prayers of a man who has no idea whether any of it is working. In October of 1917, Oswald Reginald Chambers is struck with appendicitis. It comes quickly, the way it does, without warning and without courtesy. He is rushed to the hospital in Cairo. Surgery is performed. The surgery goes as well as anyone could reasonably hope. And then something happens that the doctors cannot explain with the clarity they would prefer. Something goes wrong in the days after. He does not recover the way he should recover. He is 33 years old, healthy in every way the camp life allows, and his body refuses to do the simple thing his body is supposed to do. He dies on November 15, 1917. He is 43 years old. Gertrude is in the camp. Kathleen is asleep in the hut when it happens. The grief is immediate and specific. Not the distant abstract grief of a public figure whose name you knew but whose face you had never seen. The men in the camp who hear the news are men who had sat in the wooden hut and been told the truth when no one else was telling them the truth. The letters to families that Gertrude sends in the days that follow are not form letters. Each one is a different name. Each one is a different account of a different man in a different moment who had encountered something in Oswald Chambers that he had not encountered before and would not forget. Gertrude does not go home. This is the thing that changes everything. She stays. She continues running the hut. She continues the morning teaching. She is a woman in a military camp in 1917, and she stays and does the thing because it is not finished, and she is the one who knows how to finish it. And she has the shorthand notes, all of them. 11 years of Oswald's teaching, written in her precise stenographer's hand, every morning and every evening, every class at the college and every address at the camps, everything. She begins to type them up. She spends the rest of her life typing them up. She publishes the first compilation in 1927. She calls it My Utmost for His Highest. It is a daily devotional. It is a book of stripped-down, undecorated teaching by a man who would not say a thing he did not believe. Compiled and arranged and released to the world by a woman who believed in it enough to spend 30 years of her own life, making sure it reached the people who needed it. My Utmost for His Highest does not immediately become famous. It has a modest beginning. It goes into print and stays in print, and the people who find it tend to keep it. They underline it. They pass it to other people. They bring it back to read again in the hard years. It is not an inspirational book in the way we generally use the word inspirational. It is not comfortable. It does not flatter you or tell you that you are enough exactly as you are. It tells you the truth about what the Christian life actually requires, in the language of a man who paid the price to say it with authority. It never goes out of print. In more than a century, it has not gone out of print. By the year 2000, it is the best-selling devotional book in the English language. It has been translated into 40 languages. There is no continent on which someone is not reading Oswald Chambers over morning coffee and finding the day slightly altered by what he said. The missionaries in Nigeria who read it aloud in the early morning. The teenagers in South Korea who copy out passages into their journals. The elderly women in Calgary who have carried the same copy for 40 years with the spine taped and the pages soft with use. The seminarians in Mexico City who argue about him. The pastors in rural Manitoba who do not have a theological library but have this book. And for the season in which the loneliness of ministry is most acute, this book is enough. He never built a large organization. He never led a movement that was named after him. He never addressed a crowd of 10,000 or had his photograph taken in front of a stadium. He taught in a wooden hut in the Egyptian desert until his body gave out, and his wife typed up what he said, and that is all. That is all. What does one man's yes actually produce? A book that has not gone out of print in 100 years. A devotional read daily in 40 languages. Men who sat in the camp at Zion who came home from the war, and built churches and raised children, told their children what they had encountered in the hut in the desert, and those children told their children. And somewhere in that long chain of consequence is a grandmother in Lethbridge who opened the same battered copy that her mother gave her, and found the sentence that she needed on the morning she most needed it, and got up from the kitchen table and went back to her life, changed in a way she could not have earned or arranged for herself. Oswald Chambers is not remembered because he was strategic. He is remembered because he refused to say what he did not believe, even when saying something more comfortable would have been easier. And the accumulated weight of that refusal, over 43 years, turns out to be the thing that endures. There is a concept the scholars call convergence, the moment when every piece of what God has built in a person finally assembles into the thing it was always pointing toward. The Aberdeen farmhouse and the London art school, and the Japanese lectures in the Egyptian desert and the appendix that failed, and the wife who stayed. Nothing wasted. All of it raw material. But here is the thing Robert Clinton, who wrote about convergence, also said. Many people park before they get there. The cost gets too high, or the silence gets too long, or the gift they gave up aches on a Tuesday morning in a way they were not prepared for, and they stop. Oswald Chambers did not stop in the art school when the question first came. He did not stop in the college when the funding ran out. He did not stop in the desert when he was teaching to a canvas wall in 110-degree heat for men he would never see again. He did not stop. And the question, The only question this story was ever really asking is not whether God can use someone like Oswald Chambers. God clearly can. God clearly did. The question is simpler than that and more difficult than that. It is the question Gertrude Chambers answered when she opened the shorthand notebooks in a military camp in 1917 and did not close them again for 30 years. What are you willing to do with what you already hold? Comment below with "I am a fool for Christ" if you are done watching from a distance and ready to give what you have been given. Like and subscribe to Gathering of Souls for more true stories of faith that will cost you something and change you permanently. Pray this week. Not for great outcomes, for obedience. Pick up the thing you have been putting down. Say the thing you have been almost saying. Write the letter. Knock on the door. You may be in month 1 of your own desert posting, and what God builds through your obedience will outlast you by 100 years. If Oswald moved you, our next story will stop you entirely. Amy Beatrice Carmichael was a woman from a small town in Ireland who said yes to one posting and never came home. 55 years in India, no furlough, no days off, and a ministry so unlikely that the organization she built still operates today. She was afraid of the dark as a child. She spent her life walking into it. If you have ever wondered whether ordinary fear disqualifies you from an extraordinary calling, her answer will change the way you think about the road ahead. Find out why she never came home and what she built in the years that she stayed.